Hello, this is Kirsten Smith, Collections Curator at the Alberni Valley Museum. Today, on Museum at Home, we're looking at the 1911 train station. The train station is one of 5 properties on Port Alberni's Community Heritage Register, though it is the only building in the city that has a legal heritage designation. When the first train came to Port Alberni on December 20th, 1911, it arrived at the newly built station. As Ian Baird wrote in his book, CPR Stations in BC, until the 1940s, railway stations were the focal point of many BC communities. It was the center of the economic and social life of the community. It's where people arrived and departed, where business was conducted as goods were shipped and received, and it's where the mail arrived. As a boy, in March of 1912, Trevor Goodall remembered arriving in the Alberni Valley by train. In his book, Memories of the Alberni Valley, Goodall wrote, "We arrived around the loop and Alberni Station at 4:30 p.m. with a crowd to meet each train." The loop referred to how the train tracks swept out Beaver Creek Way before turning back into town as a means of dealing with the steepness of the grade. And Alberni Station was located in Northport between Latham Road and Johnson in what was then called Alberni. To meet the train, Goodall continued, was a long-remembered event with the train full of people and almost 3 partly full bags of mail. The Port Alberni train station was bigger than the one at Alberni. It housed both the train station functions and living quarters. On the ground floor, there were 2 waiting rooms, a general waiting room and a separate ladies' room. Each had access to a washroom. There was also an office with space for the telegraph operator and a baggage room. Note the bump out in the office that says operator? This alcove had windows on 3 sides and allowed the telegraph operator to see up and down the tracks without going outside. A portion of the ground floor was given to living quarters, with a living room, pantry, and kitchens at the back, while upstairs was entirely living quarters with a family bathroom and 3 bedrooms. In this photo, you can just make out the head of a dog at the window. This would have been the kitchen of the living quarters. We assume that the early station agents lived at the train station. A.T. Trenouth, circa 1912, Oscar Day, who left in 1928, and B.T. Allard, who was agent from 1928 to around 1941. Alex Martiniche, who was station agent from 1941 to 1957, did not live in the station, but had a home elsewhere in town. And Bob Robertson, who was station agent from 1957 to 1966, only lived at the station for a short time before moving to his own home. Mrs. Robertson said that during their tenure at the station, all the furnishings were their own and that heat was supplied by coal briquette heaters and a coal stove. The station was designed by R.A. Bainbridge, as were many of the stations on Vancouver Island. It's likely that the Bainbridge station outside of Port Alberni was named after him. The station was built in the bungalow style that was popular in Canada in the early 20th century. The low-hipped roof, decorative knee braces, deep eaves, and repetition of multi-paned windows are all characteristics of the bungalow style that can be found on many CPR stations. In fact, the stations in neighboring cities are very similar, as you can see here at the station in Nanaimo. And the station in Duncan, built in 1912, is nearly identical to ours. The repetition of a similar style and building plan gave a consistency or brand to the stations, but was also a cost-saving measure. And as we learn in Ian Baird's book, this cost saving continued in the use of wood siding for the buildings and the Tuscan red color the stations were painted. The high lead content used to create the Tuscan red color made the paint more durable. And now I thought we'd take a chronological walk through some of the museum's photographs of the train station. We start with the crews clearing the land for the E&N yard and terminals in the fall of 1911. This is the first train to arrive at the station on December 20th, 1911, which is then the first train to leave the station on December 21st, 1911. In 1912, the first railcar load of lumber left the station, though what I find interesting about this photo is that it shows the back of the station. Most photos tend to show the railway side of the building. The station master and his family would have had their kitchen here and their living room here. On the upper floor, the left dormer was a bedroom, and the right dormer, the bathroom. These photos are from quite early on, but you can see Port Alberni has now been painted on the roof, on both ends of the station. and here again around 1913. This Leonard Frank photo shows the station on the left, with the town gazebo and Somes Hotel at the right. The Somes Hotel was considered to be a first-class institution, the largest and best-equipped hotel in town. Around 1915, we have this view of the train station in the snow. And here in May of 1917, we see the station in context. The Somes Hotel is the tallest building you can see, and the Kalmar block is at the far right. This is George and Helen Richardson standing on the platform of the station. From 1919 to 1920, the Richardsons made their home in the Somes Hotel, while George worked as a civil engineer for the railway. This photo from the late 20s or early 30s shows that the station is still a bustling area of activity. This is the annual picnic train for the Alberni Pacific Lumber Company in 1938. It's one of the few photographs in the collection where we can see the entrance to the ladies' waiting room. If you're familiar with the train station today, you'll know that this door no longer exists. This beautiful photo was taken with a glass negative, which makes it very crisp and clear. It's probably from the 1940s, but before 1949. Because in February of 1949, the last steam-driven passenger train arrived. Alex Martiniche, station master from 1941 to 1957, said that the station was rebuilt about 1950 because the original building was rotting and becoming unusable. You can see the wood siding below the windows is covered up with brick. New windows were installed, and there is no longer a second story. And the cute little bay window that permitted sight lines up and down the track has been removed. In this aerial photo from around 1952, you can see the plain, simple form of the renovated train station before the truck bays were added. In 1956, a 30-foot warehouse extension was added on the south side of the train station. And then, behind this extension, truck bays were built perpendicular to the original train station. You can see the start of the truck bays, with trucks parked in front, here at the right of this photo. Passenger service, which had declined from twice daily runs to a once-a-day run, was cancelled altogether in 1957, as the automobile and better highways made the train less important. By 1976, the train station is looking a bit run down. In 1978, BC Premier Bill Bennett, on a well-publicized trip, found the E&N railway stations to be in a deplorable state, and the AV Times reported the city of Port Alberni would try to secure funds that the BC government was offering for restoration of the railway stations. But the restored station you can see today didn't come about until 1990. In 1990, the city of Port Alberni purchased the train station, and with the discovery of the original plans for the building, the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society undertook a restoration of the train station. The majority of the work happened over a 3-day station raising in July 1990. The 1950s brick siding on the lower half of the walls was removed. The different layers of roofing materials were removed and replaced with shakes. The bungalow-style characteristics like multi-paned sash windows and the decorative ship's knee braces were returned. The telegraph operator's alcove at the front of the building was rebuilt, and the upper story was put back in place. It was in this same year, in 1990, that the train station was legally designated as a heritage property, and today, in 2020, it remains the only building in town with a legal heritage designation. In 2006, the Community Heritage Register was created. This is an official list of properties identified by the City of Port Alberni as having heritage value. Being on the register is not the same as having legal designation. In addition to Rollin Arts Centre, the Carmore Block, the 1939 Post Office on Johnson Road, and City Hall, the train station was included on this register. If you want to find out more about the heritage properties on the Community Heritage Register, you can find them on the website historicplaces.ca. Just search for Port Alberni. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching the Alberni Valley Museum's Museum at Home.